Good evening. It's been a while since we gave you a live share. Unfortunately, I've been under the weather here in Brooklyn, and lasted a lot longer than I anticipated. But Baruch Hashem, at least I was able to record through audio, and hopefully we'll be able to, with Siyata Deshmaya, with the Eibishter's help, we'll be able to continue giving live classes. Gesundheit and Freilichkeit. Okay, so today's daf is Daf Pei Aleph Amud Aleph, and we're going to begin on the last line, Taran Rabbanan. Now the Gemara is going to bring a brayso which brings different conditions that Yeshua made when the Yidden inherited Eretz Yisrael, and the first Tanaim, etc., etc. So he says like this: Taran Rabbanan, we learned in a brayso, Asara Tanaim Hisna Yeshua. Yeshua made 10 conditions when the Yidden came in, when the Shvatim came into Eretz Yisrael. Now, what were those 10 conditions? So he says like this. First of all, Shiyu Maden Bechidashin, that people shall have the right to graze their animals in forests, even if it's private property. That's the first thing. So Yeshua made it tonight when coming to Eretz Yisrael, that people have the right to graze their animals in forests, even on private properties. And malaktin eitzim b'sedisem, and that they shall have the right to gather wood, from each other's fields, to be used as food for animals. Umalaktim asavim b'chol makim, and that they have the right to gather vegetation, wild vegetation for animals, in any place, chutz mitilton, except for a field of, like it's a type of Greek, it's called funegreek. And they have the right to pluck off, shoot anywhere in there. Chutz migreifi shel zayis, except for olive shoots. And that people of the city shall have the right to take supplies of water from a spring on private property. The people can take from there. And even from a spring that emerges, first of all, and even from a spring that emerges for the first time, and that they have the right to fish in the sea of Tveria. Provided that the fisherman does not build in a fence, an underwater fence to catch fish, which causes like for the boats not to pass. So that was the 10 Tanaim. Sorry, we didn't finish. That's a 6 Tanaim. Now the brayso then continues the list of Yeshua's also as well. V'nifnin la'acheri hagadar, and people should have the right to relieve themselves outside behind a fence. Afilu b'sada malei karkim, even in a field full of karkim. U'mahalchim b'shvil harishus, and they have the right to walk in permitted paths. In other words, those paths that cut through a private field. Asheter devia shnia, throughout the summer until the second rainfall, when the crops begin to sprout. And they have the right to veer off to the sides of the roads onto on private property because of hard protrusions of the road. Ateya ben hakramim, and those who become lost amongst the vineyards shall have the right to cut down branches and enter the area of the vineyard. Ateya ben hakramim mafsik v'elo mafsik v'edid. So again, a person who becomes lost amongst the vineyards has the right to cut down branches and enter an area of vineyard, or cut down branches and exit an area of vineyard until he finds his way back to the road. And also a meis mitzvah, a corpse with no one to bury it, so meis mitzvah acquires this place and is buried where it was found. So that was the 10 things that, this is where we started today, the 10 things that Yeshua Masakin. So again, number one is that behemoths, he said, is that people should have the right to graze their animals in forests. And the person who owns the forest should not be makbid. He said as well is that
forest or fields?
The forest. yar.
Who didn't want to?
That's what Rashi says over here. Behemoths achayrshin sh'layakbid bal hayar kolkach. I don't know if it's privately owned. If it's a forest, even if it's privately owned, he's allowed to bal hayar. Now, should also have the right to gather wood from each other's fields. That's number 2. Number 3 is you can gather grass for Michael Behema except for this Tilton grass. Number 4 is that you can cut, you can pluck shoots anywhere you want. I don't remember. Could be this one. And also, the people to the city have the right to take supplies of water from a spring on Rosh Hashanah, and even from a spring that emerges for the first time. And they have the right to take the fish of the Sea of Tveria, provided that the fisherman doesn't build like this underwater fence to catch the fish, which causes like a net, which causes it's ma'akiv the ships from going there. And as well, people have the right to relieve themselves. They can go to the bathroom where they want, even in a field of karkaim, and they can go in the paths of Rishus Rabbim, in other words, those paths that cut through a private Rishus throughout the summer until the second rainfall, and they shall have the right to veer off to the sides of the roads because of the hard protrusions, and if they're lost or they become lost amongst the vineyards, they can cut down also trees and stuff. And number 10, so now the Gemara is going to go delve into this. The first condition mentioned in the Brisa is Shiumarim b'chiroshin, that people have the right to graze their animals in forests. Now, Amar Papa says, Le'amarin eladaka begasa. We said this only with regard to small domesticated animals. For example, a sheep or a goat that graze in a forest. Le'amarin eladaka begasa. So, which means that you have these domesticated animals, sheep or goats, that graze in a forest of large trees. So, small animals grazing in a forest of this kind will not destroy the forest. But in the case of a small animals grazing in a forest with a small growth, or let's say large animals, oxen grazing in a forest of large trees, so that's why? Because in these scenarios, they're going to destroy the forest. And the more so it's understood that large animals grazing in a forest of small growth is not permitted. So that's the first din. Now the Gemara discusses the next mention in the Bryce. It says, Malaktin eitzim b'sedeisem, and they have the right to gather wood from each other's fields to use it as animal food. So the Gemara says, Lo yamarn ela behizmi v'higi. They said this only with regards to twigs of thorn and like shrubs, as the field's owner doesn't care about these items. But with regards to other wood, that is not permitted. And even, let's say, with thorns and shrubs, they said this heter of taking it's only if they are attached to the ground. But if they are detached by the owner, then it's not permitted, because the owner already claimed it for himself. The Gemara says, and even when they are attached, we say this only when the twigs are still moist. But when they are completely dry, it's not permitted, as the owner requires these for firewood. Provided that one does not uproot a thorn bush or shrub from the ground, but it's also to pull them out with their roots. Now, the Gemara discusses Yeshua made a tanai, and that they shall have the right to gather wild vegetation for animal food in any place except for tilton. So the Gemara says the name of the tilton me'al. It's like a type of Greek vegetable. In English, it's called a funi Greek, F-E-N-U-E Greek. I don't know what it is, so let's Google it. Okay, so now the Gemara says the memra the tilton me'alula savim. Is this to say that wild vegetation is good for?
Better than grass.
Is this to say? Remember the tilton me'alula me'esav savim. Is this to say that wild vegetables is greater than grass, and therefore the owner wants to be left in the field? Or I'm going to ask you a question. Tilton shall also amine asavim ein mechavin esel akar. There's a Mishnah that deals with different types of kilayim, and it says in regards to this tilton that's sprouted alongside various types of wild vegetation, one is not required to uproot the vegetation. Although it's generally usher to grow different species of vegetables together in one patch, if the species have a negative impact on each other's growth, it's not usr. In this case, the wild vegetables may be left alongside the Greek vegetables because it's harmful to it. The halacha of kilayim do not apply in this kind of this kind. So what do we see? That people don't want it. Right? Tilton shasal min asam ein mechayim nes.
If you don't have to pull it out, that means it is choshev, it's for you. If you have to pull it out, then you don't want it. If you have to pull it out, it's a toiva. That's because if you don't pull it out, that means it's helpful for the thing.
So what's the question? Remember the tilton me'al le'asam. Is this to tell me that grass is greater than tilton? I want to ask you a question. What does it say? Tilton she'olsa, meaning this tilton that grew with other grass. We don't make the balasada uproot the grass because of kilayim. Why? Because it's going to harm the tilton.
It will harm?
Yeah, that's what he says over here. Kivan shu asin ma'atz melakrim pnei shemafsidim esatilton muvor sha'asav mafsidim esatilton. So we see. So what's the question? That the grass, we see that we see that grass kills the tilton. So Amar Rav Yirmiyah says like kasha. It's not a question. Kan lezera, kan lezidin. The Mishnah is referring to a case where this Greek was planted for its seeds. There, the Brisa that lists Yeshua's condition is referring to planted for its stalks. Lezera kashu lo asavim. When it's planted for its seeds, so then wild vegetation is bad for it. The mikashilei, as it weakens, it lowers it. Lezidin, but when it's for stalks, ma'alelo, it's good for it. The chikaim b'nei asavim, as when it's situated amongst the vegetation, merakiva, it climbs on it and thereby grows to a larger size. Okay, Iboy Sam, if you want, you could say another answer. Kan la'adam, kan la'behema. Here, the Mishnah is referring to a case where this Greek was planted. This Greek, fenugreek Greek, it's called, was planted for human consumption. And here, and kan la'behema, the Bryce is referring to planted for animal consumption. Since the owner sold this for animals' consumption, so the wild vegetation is also required for him, as this too can be used for food of the animal.
Use both.
Yeah. Well, we know Yadina, and how can we know if this particular field was planted for humans or for animal? So I'm going to if he planted it in rows, so then you say it's for human consumption. The shorim mishari, if he did not plant it in rows, but planted like haphazardly, then the behemoth it's for human animals. Now the Brisa says as well, the Brisa taught the koimtin nitiyah b'chol makom, and they shall have the right to pluck off a shoot anywhere for planting. Chutz migirfiyah shel zayis, except for the olive shoots, as this would cause damage to the olive trees. So they explain this in the name of a certain elder. With regards to an olive tree, one must leave a shoot the size of an egg on the trunk when it's detaching from the trunk. With regards to the reeds and the grapevines, he could take shoots only from the places of the first knot and above. But other trees, from the thick of the tree, where there are many branches growing.
You want to replant the tree?
Yeah, or for whatever. But not from the thin part of the tree. What do you use it for? Yeah, probably. Okay. Furthermore, he says, "Min chadash and esaperis, from a new branch which does not yield produce fruit. Min yashan esaperis, but not from again." So he says like this: a new branch which does not yet produce fruit, but not from old branches which do produce fruit. One may take from a place that does not face the sun. Pei aleph amid aleph, and not from a place that faces the sun. Like it says, as it says, from the sun, from the precious things are the fruit of the sun. The Brisa further states, and that people of the city shall have the right to take supplies of water from a spring on a Rosh Hashayachid. the people of the city can supply themselves with this from this mayan. A person, even though we're saying that a person can draw water from the spring, he must give money to reimburse the owner of the property. So the Gemara say the Allah is not in accordance with this opinion, as water could be taken even without payment. Next thing, Yeshua has made a Tanayim Mechakin b'Yam shel Tveria, and they shall have the right to fish in the Sea of Tveria. Provided.
The water was running off through this canal or whatever, going through your field, so you didn't own the water's running further. So
Right.
You want to redirect the water, what do you do? The water stops, it's a pond in his field,
Yeah, or like you said, maybe it's running through his water.
so what's the question? So the water's running through his
So the
water?
question is, could you go on? So Yeshua made it tonight that
They go into his property.
they go into the property and take the water. Yeah. So he says that they have the right to fish in the Sea of Tveria, provided that the fisherman does not build an underwater fence to catch the fish, and causing an impediment of boats. Gemara says, but one may fish with nets and with traps. Initially, the Shvatim made a Tanai with each other that one may not build an underwater fence to catch fish. But one may fish with nets and with traps. We learned in a Brayse, the Sea of Tveria, was located in the portion of Naphtali. The Shevet Naphtali received in addition a small stretch of land equal to the full length of the rope of the fish trap. The stretch of the land was located on the south of the sea, where the members of the tribe would spread out their fishing nets. As the pasuk says, they possessed the sea and the south. Tanya, we learned in a Brayse. Shimon Lazar Imer, Tlushin Shabaharim, detached items that are found in the mountains at the time of Yeshua, the conquest. Becheskas Kol Shvatim Heim Eimdim. They are considered to be in the possession of all the Shvatim equally, as spoils of the war. But with that which is attached, in other words, trees, Becheskas Eisi Shevet are bechazaka, that they belong to the shevet that would receive the land where the trees was found. Brayse adds, you don't have a single shevet that did not have in its portion at least some land in the mountains, some in the lowlands, some in the countryside, and some in the valley. Like it says, the Torah says, turn and take in your journey to go to the hill country of the Amoraim and all their neighbors in the Arava and in the hill country and in the lowland and in the courtside and by the seashore. You find, it says, and to all their neighbors. So apparently the Amoraim and all the neighbors had all these variety of lands, types of lands in their territories.
Talking to everybody.
Talking to everybody. Now the Gemara discusses the next of Yeshua's Tanaim. People have the right to relieve themselves outdoors behind a fence. Even in a field, it's called in English saffron.
Saffron is very
Costly.
Saffron
Yeah.
is the most expensive, a little ounce costs hundreds of dollars.
But it's also in diamonds also, or
No, saffron, that's sapphire.
sapphire?
Saffron is a
No.
very
No, not yet.
big chefs use it.
Saffron, right.
Very expensive.
Yeah, and it's called karkum. Yeah. Okay. He says it goes without saying that a person can relieve himself when necessary. The Tanai is necessary only to permit to relieving himself, take a stone out of the wall in the field. That's how they cleaned themselves in the olden days. Even on Shabbos. Mar Zutra, the tzaddik, would take a stone in his manner on Shabbos and replace it in the wall and say to his attendant, after Shabbos, go and plaster it over so that it would fit securely back in the wall. And they shall have the right to walk in permitted paths. In other words, those paths that cut through a Rishus HaYachid throughout the summer until the second rainfall when crops began to sprout. with regard to these fields that we have in Bavel, even dew that settled in the previous night is bad for them. In other words, even after a night of dew, the field is sufficiently has moisture, and trampling on it will cause damage, and therefore this Tanai does not apply if there was dew on the previous night. The next Tanai Yeshua made is a Masakim L'Tzidei Hadrachim, and they shall have the right to veer off the sides of the road onto Rishus HaYachim. May you say this Hadrachim because they have a lot of hard protrusions on the road. Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda v'Shakli v'Ozli b'Orcha. Shmuel and Rav Yehuda, who lived in Bavel, were once walking along the road, having Mistaka Shmuel L'Tzidei Hadrachim, and Shmuel veered off the sides on the road to the Rishus HaYachid. Rabbi Yehuda says, Tanayin Shisna Yeshua Afilu B'Bavel, to the conditions that Yeshua made apply even to Bavel. Amalei Shani Emer. Shmuel says, yes, indeed so. It's Shani Emer that I say, Afilu B'Chutz Ha'aretz, they apply even outside of Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara says the next story, Rabbi, which is of course Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and Rabbi Chia were once walking along the road. And they veered off to the sides of the road. Have come Fasa v'Ozor Rabbi Yehuda ben Nekoisa Kamayu. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Keinoso was taking broad steps on the road to avoid the protrusions without going off the sides of the road or walking in front of them. Who is the man who is showing off his greatness in our presence by acting more machmer than required by halacha? Because by halacha you're allowed to go on the road. So Rabbi Chia said to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Shem Rabbi Yehuda ben Kneisa Talmidi who? Perhaps it's my student Rabbi Yehuda ben Kneisa. All his actions are l'shem shemayim. He's not acting out of gaiva. When they reached him and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi saw him, he said about him, Ilav Yehuda ben Kneisa at Gizartinu l'shakoch begizet de parzla. If you were not Yehuda ben Kneisa, I would have cut off your legs with iron shears. In other words, I would excommunicate you for what you're doing. The Brisa continues. It's a solution. Gizartinu l'shakoch begizet de parzla. Yeah, very rough. Hataya ben Akramim, one who becomes lost amongst the vineyards. So Mefasik v'yer, Mefasik v'ela has the right to cut down branches and enter.
To see the road or to see.
Yeah, and he can go into the vineyard and cut down branches and exit near your vineyard until he finds his way back to the road. Chacham said, a person who sees another person lost amongst the vineyards, so a person who sees his friend lost amongst vineyards, he may cut down branches and enter the vineyard and then cut down branches and exit it to find him. Similarly, he himself is one who's lost amongst vineyards. He can do the same thing. What is the point of v'chein? Why would I think there's a difference? So you would say like this. You would say that only another person who's permitted to cut down branches as having seen the lost party, he knows exactly where he's going to rescue the other.
The one goes and he sees him lost,
so he can know. But he himself, he doesn't know where he's going. Maybe he cannot cut it down. So he might, but he does not know where he's going. One would have said that he may not cut down branches and must go all the way back to the boundary of the vineyard. Therefore, it teaches us that one who's lost may cut down branches. It doesn't make a difference if it's he or somebody else. It's not a problem. Now the Gemara questions: why was it necessary for Yeshua to make a Tanai that one may find his way out in this manner? This is Deiraisa. When one is lost, whoever can insist in helping him find his way must do so. The Tanya Hashavas Gufa Minayin Tamalei Marav Hashivasi. The Torah says there's a mitzvah to return lost items to the owner. From where do we know that even returning his body, helping a lost person find his way, it's also minat Torah? Torah says Vahashivasi, and you shall restore it to him, which can be translated as you shall restore himself to him. So L'cheda, why did Yeshua make a Tanai condition to this effect? So my answer is by Torah law, one is required only to walk in a roundabout path along the boundaries without damaging another vine or cutting off branches. Also, who takin the mafsik v'ela mafsik v'yed. So Yeshua came and instituted the Tanai that one may go further and cut off branches and ascend, or cut off branches and descend, thereby leaving through a more direct route. Last thing we learned, umeis mitzvah kana mekeme, and a corpse with no one to bury is acquired in its place and is buried where it was found. What do you mean? The Gemara says, when asked a shayla stira, ameitzi meis mutal bistratio, faneli ministratio, l'smeil. One who finds a corpse laid out on a main street, evacuates it for burial either to the right or the right of the street or to the left of the street, but it may not be buried under the main street itself. Stay board, stay near, mefanela, stay board. If one can move the corpse either to a fallow field or a plowed field, he evacuates to a fallow field. If stay near, stay zeta, then mefanela, stay near, he evacuates him to a plowed field. How you stay in Beidis? If there were two Beidis, stay in Nidas or stay in Zreis, mefanela makom shiritza. So according to this brisa, mes mitzvah is not necessarily buried where it's found. It can be moved elsewhere. So Rabbi with regard to a corpse laid out on a pathway where the corpse buried there, it would aser kainim. So since permission was already granted to evacuate it from there, so when you can move it anywhere. If, however, the corpse was in the field, it would be aser to move it. Now, the Gemara now returns to the opening statement of the Brisa that Yeshua made a Tanai of 10 things. So Amri, the Gemara says, Amri Asada, are you really, is there only 10? Hanichad Tzrei Havyan, these conditions enumerated in the Brisa are actually 11. So the Gemara says, Mahacham B'Shvila Rishuz Shleim Amaran. You should know the condition that one may walk in permitted paths that cut through a private field in the summer was instituted not by Yeshua, but by Shleim HaMelech. The Tanya, like we learned in the Brisa, Harishakala Peresim and Asada, if one's produce was completely harvested from the field, but he does not allow people to enter into his field to shorten the route. What do people say about him? What benefits does so-and-so have by denying entry into the field? And what harm are people causing him by going into this field? Now, so first, regarding this, the pasuk says, do not be called wicked by refraining from being. So the Gemara asks, is it really written, do not be called wicked by refraining from being good? There's no such a pasuk. So the Gemara says, the Torah says, withhold not good from him to whom is due, when it is in the power of your hand to do so. So the Gemara now questions the statement of the Brisa that Yeshua instituted tonight. The sulekas are nothing more that Yeshua instituted. During the time of the manure removal, a person may remove his manure from his property into the Rishus Harabim. And first of all, a person can remove his manure from his property into the Rishus Harabim and pile it up there for 30 days. So that it should be stepped on by the feet of people and by the feet of animals, which improves the quality. On this condition, Yeshua was manchel Eretz Yisrael to the Jewish people. Gemara continues the line of the question. The Tanya Rabbi Shmuel b'nei Shel Rabbi Yechon ben Breka Imer Tanai Beis Hu she'azeh yedel tichse the Chaverei v'keitzet seiche shechaverei lahatzal nechil shalei v'neis nalei d'mei seiche shechaverei, which means that they made a Tanai in Beis Din that is automatic right that this owner of, let's say, a bee colony may enter the field of another and chop off the other's branches in order to save his bee colony. And afterwards, he gives him the value of the other's branch. So if a beekeeper finds that one of his colonies has relocated to a tree in a neighboring field, he may bring it back to his own property together with the branch, provided that he later reimburses the owner of the tree. Now, Tanai Beis Din, and so the Brisa continues, Tanai Beis Din hu she'azeh shefech yenu matzal duf shani shel chaverei. This is also a Tanai of the Beis Din that this bearer of wine pours out the wine from his barrel and uses the barrel to save another spilling honey. Because which this is more valuable than wine, and he takes the value of the wine from the saved honey of the other as reimbursement. It's also a Tanai of the Beis Din that this owner of wood unloads his wood from his donkey and loads another flax, which is more valuable than wood. If the load of flax is stranded on the road due to a mistake. And also, he takes the value of the wood from his saved flax of another individual. So once again, this was on condition that Yeshua for the Yidden. Yeah. Now the Gemara explains why the Tanai mentioned by Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shmuel are not in the Brisa. So the Gemara, in the Brisa, the Gemara answers, we're not speaking of individual opinions, but only that were accepted by all the Chacham. So the Gemara asks, he says, with regards to both a tree that leans into the field of another, and a tree that is close to a boundary with another field, maybe vikeda. The owner of the tree brings the first, maybe vikeda, yeah. The person brings the first fruits of the tree and recites the vidoy, vikeda. This is an additional Tanai by Yeshua, which means that there are more than 10. So the Gemara answers and says, Alaman Tana Afer Tanan Shis Yeshua, Yeshua ben Levi, so Yeshua. Agviyim Ebe Kosel Masnala Behedya. Tanchum Rabbi Yisam Mishum Zokan Echad, Oman Yeshua ben Levi, that what? It's Asada, Tanoin, Hisna Yeshua, it's Dafka. This person said Yeshua stipulated 10 conditions. All right, we'll start, tomorrow we'll continue.